guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about scale sequencing. It's a tool that I use quite a lot, and actually a lot of soloists use a lot. I'll explain how to practice them, what to look out for when you practice them, and what they're useful for. There's several reasons why practicing your scales using sequences is actually a very good way to develop your knowledge of the fretboard, but your technique as well, and your sort of melodic approach to soloing as well. So also, just a few more things. If you could keep on subscribing to my page. I've had quite a few, again, some number of subscribers. I think I'm on 300, which isn't sounding great, but considering where I was a few months ago, it's really nice to feel that I'm starting to get some traction with the YouTube page and other lessons. Keep asking me for stuff that you want me to do. I've seen quite a lot of comments lately about things people would like me to look into. I've got a backlog of things to do, so hopefully I'll get to the sort of requests that I've had. But anyway, so what I wanted to do today is show you a little bit about scale sequencing. So what we're going to do, we're going to stay in the key of G today. So I'm going to first sort of show you, demonstrate you very quickly the position we're going to be playing from. We're going to be basing everything on 3 notes per string. So let's have a quick look at the scale itself. Right, so I'm basing it from the third fret of E. So I'm going 3, 5, 7 on the E, 3, 5, 7 on the A, then 4, 5, 7 on the D, same thing on the G, then 5, 7, 8 on the B, then 5, 7, 8 on the B. Now, technically speaking, I should be finishing off on the 5th of E just to finish off on the root, but otherwise we'll lose out on the 3 note per string feel, which is a lot easier to play a lot of these kind of ideas on. So what I wanted to show you is what sequencing means. There's lots of sequences out there, so I'll probably do a series of lessons on different types of sequencing. There's so many permutations you could do. But we're going to take one that's quite common, quite a basic one that we all learn. I tend to teach that to my students as well. So this is what I call the sort of the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 5 sequencing. So by that I mean this. So I'm gonna first, let's actually do this. I'm gonna show it to you very quickly, then I'll break it down. So that was what I did there. It was a 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 5 sequence in triplets. We're starting off on a group of the first 3 notes of the scale. Now it's imperative when you're going to practice your scale sequencing to be very, very comfortable with the actual scale itself. If you don't know the scale itself, then this becomes really tricky. If you know the scale really well, you'll notice that after a while of playing this, you're going to feel that you're starting to get the pattern. It's effectively pattern driven. So let's have a look at this. The first sequence will be starting from the root note all the way up to the 3rd note. So in this case, 3, 5, 7. Then what we're going to do, we're going to go in the middle note and play the next sequence from there. And then we're going to go to the 3rd note and play for the 3 notes up from there. And so forth. So, sorry. We're going to play like that all the way up to the top, and then we're going to come back. Okay? So let's do this exercise very slowly now. What we're going to do, I'm going to play to you in triplets, because we're going to do something a little bit different after that, so you can see, which is the second example. So let's have a look at, in triplet, playing this sequence. 3, 4. Right, so what you notice there is basically we're playing groups of 3 notes per beat, and we're basically going up like that through the scale. Now, there are a few difficulties that come, and this is why a lot of people tend to maybe sometimes avoid playing sequencing. You might have noticed I was using strict alternate picking. You don't have to, but I tend to sort of encourage when you're first learning to do sequencing to actually practice this with alternate picking, because it's going to add a few little challenges that you want to be able to get through. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. on the guitar or on any instrument, it's very important to not get stuck in doing things in one way all the time. And by that I mean, if you're practicing in alternate picking, this kind of exercises, you'll notice that you're going to be attacking certain strings on a downstroke and certain strings will be on an upstroke. It's going to alternate. You're going to start on that one string on a downstroke, the other one on an upstroke. Let's just have a look at the first two strings, you'll notice that straight away. So if you notice here, it's an upstroke going into the A string. And then if you notice going on the D, it's a downstroke. If you pay attention to my right hand. So the thing here, if you're practicing attacking a string with a downstroke and then with an upstroke, whatever condition you're in a solo, you'll never really have an issue to play either way. Okay, so that's why I'm saying it's always important to break little habits straight away. And sequencing, especially when you've got numbers, change on strings that where your downstrokes and your upstrokes are inverted between strings is a very, very good way of practicing these kind of exercises. It really helps you to sort of break habits. Okay, so that's for one thing. Now the other thing I was doing, obviously, a little bit of palm muting never helped. Always helps. Sorry, not never. Always helps. So a bit of palm muting, especially from the lower strings. And like I said, I was going in a strict group of three. Now I'm going to show you a second example now. So let's have a look at the example, then we'll discuss what's happening in that one. Right, so you'll notice that the feel of this particular example number 2, is fairly different to the first one. Now, what was happening in there? Instead, I'm still playing effectively the same sequence. I'm still going, the first 3 notes, taking the middle note and going up another 3. So constantly going 3, back 1. So I tend to compare that to like a bit of snakes and ladders. You go up 3 and then you drop 1 and you go back another 3. So it's basically a similar kind of thing. But what I was doing here is what I call a sort of a slight little rhythmic displacement, effectively. So we've got a group of 3 notes, but I was playing them as a group of 16th notes. So what that changes, it changes the whole flow of it. So when we were getting earlier, we were getting that real 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 kind of feel. We're going to get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of feel. So what that does, it actually breaks the monotony of the run and makes it less sort of obvious to the ear. So it makes the notes flow a lot more. So let's have a quick look if I do it slowly, and I'll count at the same time. So I'll count the notes at the same time, so you can clearly see how how just changing the sort of meter from triplets to 16th note changes the whole way you feel the sequence. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 1. Now, do you notice how that completely changes the feel of the of the lick? Okay, so if we do that very, very slowly, let's play it very slowly, then we'll talk about it a bit more. So yeah, you can see how that changes the entire feel. In the triplet version, if you notice, the last note actually ended up on the end of a beat, where here I landed back on the beat. So the flow changes, the whole feel of the riff. It's less obvious that we're going in groups of 3 notes. So it's a real good exercise to do, to first practice it in triplets and then moving on to 16th note. Now, one of the tricks that you have to do, because the first problem you're going to encounter, we're going to try to move these things into 16th. It's very disorientating when you're first trying to practice these. And what I would say is just take the first group of 16th note and the start of the second group of 16th note to really get the feel of how 4 notes in that sequence work. So let me explain what I mean by that. If you just take the first group, right? So this is the 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the end of 4 there, so which is the start of group number 2, right? So what you're gonna, this is the tricky bit, because you're feeling that if you've been practicing it in triplets, you're gonna feel that as, oh, that's my beat there, that's my, but it's not. That it's actually the beat up in the air for you. So this is beat number 2. The 5th fret there is which is the second note of the second group, is basically your second beat. So try to just practice getting that. Now, I would advise, for instance, using obviously a metronome. Start very slowly at 60 BPM or something. And what I would advise is also tapping your foot really hard on that beat change. So perhaps you should be able to hear my foot. Do you see? And that way you're really feeling where are those beats landing. Perhaps also accented as well. Now, you want to be careful with the accent. The thing about accent, sometimes accent again makes things a little bit predictable. If you're doing an accent every 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it becomes a little bit like, it practically is like a triplet in the sense that you're constantly telling the audience that this is the beat, this is the beat. Well, you want them to feel and you want them to flow a bit. So that doesn't mean you don't want to use accents, but you want to be careful with the usage of accents. Perhaps you want to do it every 8. So just not to bring too much monotony in the playing. Okay, so that's basically sequences. Now I will be looking at more other sequences. There are some other great ones, also other ways of looking at sequences. But let me also show you how does this all help you in your playing? Well, it does a lot. You notice the right hand technique obviously takes a real workout on the right hand technique if you're using alternate picking. But like I said, you can use legato as well. Sorry. You're going to have to mix it up a little bit with some picking. You can do that, but I would really advise this kind of technique when you're purely practicing your scales with sequences. Is probably better to do them with alternate picking. Now, how do this kind of stuff help? Well, there you go. So one obviously is the technique. We've looked at that. Second, obviously, it makes you a lot more sort of knowledgeable about your scale. Rather than being something we just linearly play up and down, we're actually creating something with the scale that's a little bit more interesting. And the other thing is obviously the practical usage. Now, if you listen to music, a lot of soloing is about sequencing things. So for instance, a good way to use sequence is to build up tension. If you're trying to go up to a certain note, so for instance, let's say we're going to stay in G and we want to target sort of the root note here on G, but we're going to, the way we're going to get to it is by bending the major 7s right behind on the 7th fret of G. That's our target. Now, we could create a melody or a sequence going up like this. Yeah, so I created a bit of tension. I didn't just straight go to that note, but I actually created a sequence to get to that note. You could do descending sequence. You can take it in any way you want, really. Yeah, so that's up to you. You can create little sequences like that allow you to get to a certain point. And that generally is how we sort of tend to use sequences. If you listen to solos now, try to hone out your ears where a guitarist is playing a sequence. Now, with sequences, like I said, it's a tricky thing to play. Now, a lot of guitarists don't tend to use them because it is a lot more demanding technically. Because you're sort of having to change the pick directions between strings and all that. But some of the real pure shredders tend to use sequencing a lot. And you can usually, if you listen to somebody like Kiko Loureiro, he uses them quite a lot. My big influence, French guitarist Patrick Honda, he's a specialist of all those. He's got some crazy sequencing, and I'll probably do a lesson on some of his sequencing that he does. So try out this sequence, this particular one. Like I said, I'll come back with some other sequences and a couple of twists around the sequences. Now, just to finish off on this, in terms of practice, first get the scale down your fingers. You cannot do anything without learning these scales. Then try to sort of, practice it in triplet. That's, slowly building up with the metronome speed. Then in the same practice session, try to then feel it as 16th note as well. So you really get two different feels, and you can use both ways in your solos as well. So, nothing stops you from going. So I just created I started off in triplet and that's just accelerated into 16th notes. So that's another little usage. Or those are little things you can go, once you get really, really good at it, you can start using these kind of ideas. So anyway, I hope this was a useful little lesson on sequencing. Ask me any questions you need about sequencing. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay safe and stay metal.